All right, so the next taker after the spouse is going to be the issue, or under the UPC, they use the term descendant. So it's going to be somebody related to the intestate in a descending line. Last class, we looked at calculating the spousal share. And in calculating the spousal share, what subparagraph of the respective statute you go to calculate the share depends on what other heirs exist. Okay? Whether or not there's a minor child or not makes a huge difference. All right, so descendants, we're looking at somebody related to the intestate in a descending line. If child one is alive, then neither grandchild that are descendants or issue of child one will inherit. So any living descendant cuts off the rights of the descendant's own children to inherit. So the only way grandchildren will inherit is if their parent, the intestate child, has predeceased the intestate or did not survive by the 30 days in Maryland or the 120 hours under the UPC. All right, so here are some rules. We already talked about the living child cuts off the rights of their children. How long do they have to survive? The issue have to survive 30 days in Maryland and 120 hours under the UPC. What portion do they take? I promise you that to the extent the intestate is survived by a descendant. So let's assume that there is one grandchild who survives the intestate. That one grandchild will take everything. We'll never get to any other calculation. The only person that issue or descendants will share with are the spouse. All right, let's take a look at the statutes. We're looking at 3-103 and 2-103. So make sure you take a look at those statutes and read them. Now, to the extent that we have surviving issue, then the question becomes, how do they take? What if one child is alive, but another child has predeceased the intestate? The descendants of the predeceased child will take through their parent. And the way this is calculated differs between Maryland and the UPC, and we will go through some examples, the problems, and hypotheticals. All right, so again, red is Maryland, green is UPC. Maryland takes an approach that says you're going to divide by the children as long as there's somebody under that line that can inherit. And then the descendants of the deceased child will take what would have been their parent's share. The UPC has a very different approach. They look for the descendants in the nearest generation to the decedent. So if there happens to be no surviving children, they are going to make that first division at the grandchildren level. And then once they make that division at the grandchildren level, they will do something called combining and redividing. We'll take a look at some of these. So here's your typical chart. If all of the children are alive, under every jurisdiction, whatever doesn't go to the spouse, or the balance of the estate, or the entire estate, if there is no spouse, will go amongst the children, as long as they're all surviving. What happens, however, if some of the children have predeceased the intestate? This is where we have a different result between Maryland and the UPC. In Maryland, you're going to continue to divide at the children level C2 and C3 will take their 1/4. Grandchild 1 will take what would have been his parent's share, and grandchild 7 and 8 will share, each taking an eighth of what would have been their parents' share. That's by the roots. That's Maryland. You know, the Maryland flag means Maryland, okay? Now look how this same hypothetical illustration is resolved under the UPC by the head. So what we do is we all divide at the children level because that's where somebody is alive. So C2 and C3 under the UPC will still get their 1/4. But under the UPC, they want every grandchild who will inherit to take the same. So grandchild 1, grandchild 7, and grandchild 8 will each take 1/8. Now this should be green. I'm sorry that it's red. I'll come back and change it. Okay, so this is the UPC approach. What happens if everyone's gone? Well, under Maryland, each grandchild will take what would have been his or her parents' share. Okay? Under the UPC, everything drops down and we have 8 grandchildren, so all 8 will take 1/8 each. It doesn't matter if you're an only child, as grandchild 1 is, or if you're one of 3, as grandchild 4, 5, and 6. All right, so let's take another look. Here we've got all children deceased, okay? Now, in Maryland, as long as there's somebody under that line, in the A line, E, F, and G will be able to take what would have been A's share. We will divide at the children level. Under the UPC, however, you go down to the level where you find your first living descendant. That would be at the grandchildren level. E, F, G, H. You count H because even though H is deceased, there is a surviving descendant of H, which would be P, I, J, K, L is included as well. So you divide at the grandchildren level, which is different than Maryland. And the outcomes of what these people would get would be drastically different in Maryland versus the UPC. Let's take a look at a hypothetical. As long as there's one child alive, both Maryland and the UPC will be dividing at the same level. But what happens with the deceased shares, with A share, in A under Maryland, it will drop down. Each child will take what would have been his parent's share, and we will divide at the EG level. Under the UPC, you're going to go all the way down to M, N, and O before you make that distribution of the 1/4 that would have been A share. That's the difference in what it means to pass by representation. Hypothetical 2, again, you're dividing at the same level. Why? Because D is alive. Then in Maryland and UPC, drastic differences. Under Maryland, the descendants of A will inherit A's. The descendant of B, P, will take a full 1/4. C's share will be distributed between I, J, and K. L gets nothing because D is alive. Under the UPC, you're going to take A, B, and C's share. You're going to combine them, and you're going to redivide them at the children level. Drastically different between Maryland and the UPC. So try to work these out. What happens if all the people are dead? Again, still dividing at the children level, but look, the BHP line has been eliminated. So instead of dividing it by 1/4, as we had in the prior examples, it'll be 1/3. And then Maryland will take A's 1/3, drop it down to A's family, C's 1/3, drop it down. L will get D's full 1/3. Under the UPC, we will be adding together and redividing the thirds. A, C, and D, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, will be combined and redivided at the E, G, I, J, K, L level, right? F has been eliminated. G is counted because of N and O. They keep G in the game. What happens in 4, again, Maryland is dividing at the children level. Again, that BHP line is completely eliminated. There's no descendant to take under the B line, so it's 1/3. Divide, and then the child, the descendants of the deceased person will take their share. Under the UPC, you're going down to where you can find your first survivor, and that is where you're going to be making your division. So in terms of previewing what's next, understand that after you deal with the descendants, you're going to be looking at issue of parents, issue of grandparents. Maryland used to look to issue of maternal great-grandparents and issue of paternal great-grandparents, but however, they have been eliminated under the new law, and so it will not be necessary to go through that calculus.